11:20 p.m. 50 miles out in the Black Sea, 3 shipping containers on an anonymous cargo ship creaked open. They were about to deliver Russia a humiliating masterclass in 21st century warfare. The first move in this deadly chess game began immediately. Inside the lid container, 20 Beaver long-range drones hummed to life. They were the sacrificial pawns. Bungee catapults snapped, flinging one by one into the foggy night. Their mission was brutally simple: fly a wide looping arc to approach Tuapse from the east, perfectly mimicking an attack launched from deep inside Russian territory near Krasnodar. They were programmed to be loud, electronically obvious, and utterly irresistible targets. As the decoys began their 50-mile journey, the scene at the Tuapse oil terminal was one of arrogant calm. From the air, the facility looked less like a strategic asset and more like a slice of Las Vegas, its 4 massive piers bathed in floodlights. Docked tonight were 3 tankers, Chai Pollux and Coastbuster, holding a combined 500,000 barrels of crude. 40 million worth of cargo just sitting there. And in the air defense control rooms, operators sipped tea, scrolling through telegram channels that boasted about Russian air superiority. The consensus was clear: Tuapse was 100% safe. They had every reason to be confident. The facility was protected by 5 overlapping layers of steel and radar. 40 miles out, an S-400 battery stood guard. Closer in, a mobile shield of 4 to 6 Panzer S-1 systems patrolled the perimeter. Watching from the hills above, a massive Nebo M radar swept the sky, capable of tracking 300 targets at once. They believed no drone on Earth could get through. But suddenly, the calm was shattered at 11:30 p.m. Inside Lieutenant Ivan's Panzer S-1 command vehicle, an alarm blared. Every screen flashed red. The massive Nebo M radar had just spotted the bait exactly as Ukrainian planners had intended. 20 distinct blips appearing from the east, screaming in from the direction of Krasnodar. "Drones from Krasnodar, 20 targets!" Ivan yelled into his comms. "All batteries engage at will." The night outside exploded in fire and thunder. 4 Panzer systems unleashed a furious barrage, their 57E6 missiles roaring off their rails, carving fiery arcs into the sky. On Ivan's screen, the results were immediate. Target icons vanished one by one. 15 splashes, 15 confirmed kills. Cheers erupted over the comms network. 15 down. We got them. Tuapse is secure. Ivan allowed himself a brief, proud smile. The celebration was cut short. The 5 surviving Beaver drones executed their real mission. They weren't retreating, they were taunting. They dropped low, weaving between port cranes and the superstructures of docked ships, intentionally popping in and out of the Panzer's radar lock. Their transponders began screaming fake weapon arming signals across Russian frequencies, a purely psychological tactic designed to induce maximum panic. They became 5 electronic gadflies impossible to ignore, forcing the Russian gunners into a frantic game of digital whack-a-mole. 11:40 p.m. inside Lieutenant Ivan's command vehicle, the atmosphere was pure high-stress chaos. The 10-minute reload clock felt like an eternity. His missile launchers were useless metal frames, and his gunners were losing their minds. The turrets of their multi-million-dollar systems were slewing back and forth like confused giants, trying and failing to get a solid lock on the 5 harassing drones in the east. "Ignore the fake signals! Just track their heat signatures!" Ivan yelled, but it was useless. The drones were weaving behind port cranes, their radar signatures vanishing and reappearing. Then a new piercing alarm cut through the noise. It was a priority alert. On his main screen, 5 new blips appeared, screaming in from the south. These were different. They flew in a tight, aggressive V formation, broadcasting waves of electronic noise designed to overwhelm his targeting sensors. They weren't taunting. They were attacking. Ivan was now trapped in a commander's worst nightmare. He had no missiles. His cannons were pinned down by a diversion in the east. And a new, seemingly more lethal threat was closing in fast from the south. He had seconds to make a choice that would decide the fate of the entire facility. He made the one Ukraine was counting on. Guns, all guns, ignore the eastern ghost, shift fire to the southern sector, engage. The command took a precious 1.5 seconds to execute as the heavy 30mm cannon turrets swung ponderously from east to south. In that moment, the southern drones were 328 feet closer. Finally, the night erupted. 8 streams of 30mm tracers tore through the air, a wall of incandescent lead roaring towards the attackers. The southern drones instantly broke formation, scattering into a chaotic dance of evasion. The Russian gunners fighting through the electronic jamming were good. They were professionals. The lead drone flew straight into the storm and was shredded into 1,000 pieces. A second one trying to jink left was caught by two intersecting streams of fire and vaporized in a flash. Two more were hit and tumbled into the black water below in spectacular fireballs. It was a furious, brutal defense. They had stopped 4 out of 5. In any normal engagement, that would be a decisive victory. But in a swarm attack, you don't need all of them to get through. You just need one. Shrapnel from the shredded beaver drones rained down onto the Chai's deck, slicing a hydraulic line. A split second later, a jet of flammable mist ignited into a 60-foot torch. The impact was physically minor, a muffled thump and a small explosion from its remaining fuel. But strategically, it was a dagger to the heart. Hot shrapnel tore across the steel deck, slicing through a high-pressure hydraulic line. A fine mist of flammable fluid was sprayed into the air and was instantly ignited by the sparks. Suddenly, a brilliant orange flame erupted on the tanker's deck, a beacon in the night. Absolute, unadulterated panic flooded the Russian comms network. The tanker is on fire. I repeat, the Chai is on fire. Fire crews scrambled. Port authorities screamed for damage control. The entire command structure from Lieutenant Ivan to the port commander was now completely, utterly consumed by the fire on the water. On board the anonymous cargo ship 50 miles away, the Ukrainian operators watched the thermal feed. They didn't cheer. They simply nodded. The trap was now perfectly set. And that was the precise moment at 11:50 p.m. that the real killers arrived. The 35 Liu-Tai drones of Wave 3, launched long before now, entered their terminal attack phase. They were silent, invisible ghosts emerging from the sea. They split into 2 deadly packs. 20 swung far out to the west. 15 cut in from the south. This time, a single sharp-eyed operator in a Tor M2 vehicle spotted them. "Multiple low-altitude, high-speed contacts, western sector." He screamed over the comms, his voice cutting through the panic. "They're not decoys! Repeat! These are not decoys!" Lieutenant Ivan, his Panzer reloads finally complete, snapped out of his stupor. He slammed his fist on the console. "All units engage western targets, fire everything." It was a chaotic, desperate knife fight in the dark. The 2 westernmost Panzer systems swiveled and unleashed a full salvo of 12 missiles. But the Liu-Tai drones were too close too fast. Their AI detected the missile launches and executed pre-programmed evasive maneuvers, jinking violently. The sky was filled with explosions as missiles detonated on proximity fuses, turning the air into a storm of steel shrapnel. 4 Liu-Tai drones were shredded in midair. A 5th had its wing torn off and tumbled into the sea. A 6th was damaged, its engine sputtering, but its AI locked its control surfaces, forcing it to continue its terminal dive. Now it was the cannon's turn. The Tor M2 and the Panzer's 30mm guns opened up, creating a terrifying wall of tracers that reached out over the water. 3 more Liu-Tai drones were obliterated, simply ceasing to exist in flashes of light. 8 down, but 12 were still coming. 11:53 p.m. 12 surviving drones from the Western Pack dove. They ignored the tracers, ignored the explosions. They had one target, the underside of Piers 1 and 2, just above the waterline. Their 110-pound shaped charge warheads detonated with a series of sharp, cracking thuds. As Ivan stared in horror at the damage reports flooding his screen, the southern attack began. The 15 Liu-Tai drones from the south used a different tactic. They flew even lower, using the burning tanker Chai as a shield to mask their approach from radar. As they passed the tanker, they popped up now just seconds from impact. The remaining Panzer and Tor systems, still focused west, scrambled to react. Their turrets traversed with agonizing slowness. They only had time for a single desperate volley of cannon fire. 1 drone was hit, another was clipped and veered off course, slamming into a warehouse. 2 more down, but 13 got through clean. They slammed into the underside of Piers 3 and 4 with the same brutal, calculated precision. 11:55 p.m. At the exact moment the final Liu-Tai drone struck its target, the 5 harassing Beaver drones in the east, their distraction mission now complete, executed their final protocol. They were programmed to add chaos to the fire. 3 hit the main water pumping station, crippling the firefighters' ability to combat the blaze on the Chai. The final 2 simply dove into the maze of pipes and refinery tanks adjacent to the piers, their small warheads rupturing valves and spilling flammable chemicals. They were small fires, insignificant compared to the burning tanker, but they were the sparks that would soon ignite an inferno. And 60 miles away, the anonymous cargo ship turned southwest. its engine speed increasing to 12 knots as it began to melt back into the commercial shipping lanes. Its mission was over. But back at Tuapse, the laws of physics were just getting started. The genius of the Ukrainian plan wasn't just hitting the piers, it was how they hit them. The shaped charge warheads on the Liu-Tai drones were never designed to fight concrete. They were designed to defeat the composite armor of a main battle tank. Against the reinforced concrete of the piers, it was like stabbing a block of wood with a white-hot poker. The jet of plasma vaporized a clean, perfectly round hole straight through the outer layer, punching deep into the structural core of the pillars before unleashing its explosive force from the inside out. And that's where the real magic happened. When the 20 warheads detonated inside the pillars, the explosive pressure wave tried to expand in all directions. The shock wave hit them like a colossal sledgehammer. It wasn't an explosion that destroyed them. The 4 massive piers, the foundation of the entire facility, broke apart like pretzel sticks. The structural failure was instantaneous and catastrophic. The 1,000-foot-long piers, suddenly deprived of their support, collapsed into the sea with a deafening roar, taking trucks, cranes, and pumping equipment with them. The 3 tankers, Chai Pollux and Coastbuster, were violently thrown sideways. The Chai, already on fire, capsized, completely dumping its remaining 100,000 barrels of burning crude oil into the harbor. The fire from the Chai, now a floating sea of flame, washed over the ruptured pipes and damaged tanks on the shore that the final 5 Beaver drones had targeted just minutes before. The small chemical fires erupted into a full-blown refinery blaze. The heat, now reaching over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, began to warp and melt the steel of the nearest storage tanks. The sky over Tuapse turned from black to a pulsing, hellish orange. There had ceased to be a port and had become a vision of hell. The 4 massive piers had simply vanished, replaced by tangled steel twisted like pretzels. 80-foot flames clawed at the sky, painting the thick black smoke an apocalyptic orange. The air was filled with the shriek of groaning metal and the continuous roar of secondary explosions. The official port sirens were a weak, pathetic wail against the symphony of destruction. A seismic station 3.5 miles away even registered the final collapse as a 2.6 magnitude tremor. The port's command network went completely silent. On Russian telegram channels, the first panicked messages from soldiers appeared. Where did that swarm even come from? But the real damage wasn't just the twisted steel of the immediate aftermath. It was a strategic poison spreading through the Russian war machine on a timeline. The dominoes began to fall. With the port gone, the Russians scrambled for an alternative, only to discover their only viable detour, a 58-mile road, was now a pre-sighted kill box for Ukrainian HIMARS. The chokehold tightened. Within 48 hours, the Tuapse refinery, starved of crude, went silent. Soon after, the first reports of fuel shortages trickled in from artillery units near Tokmak. The front line was beginning to feel the squeeze. Facing a strategic disaster, the Kremlin made a painful choice. They began pulling vital Panzer systems from the front lines to protect other high-value targets, creating new gaping holes in their battlefield air defenses. You can measure the genius of this strike on 4 different levels. Physically, NASA satellites confirmed over $300 million in direct damage. Economically, Russia lost the primary artery of its Black Sea oil exports, and as one Ukrainian spokesman later noted with a smirk, maritime insurance premiums for any vessel in the region skyrocketed by 30% overnight. But even more devastating was the hit to their propaganda machine. The official Russian narrative of a technical incident collapsed within hours as dozens of videos of the inferno flooded Telegram. Russian citizens could watch their nation's oil money and Putin's war chest literally go up in smoke. The strike on Tuapse wasn't a solo performance. On the very same night as Russian commanders were screaming about the fire in Tuapse, dozens of other Ukrainian drones were slamming into oil depots in Smolensk air bases in Bryansk and power stations near Rostov. It was a calculated strategy designed to induce systemic paralysis. It presented the Kremlin with an impossible equation with 100 critical targets and only enough elite air defense systems for maybe 20. What do you save? The port, the power grid, or the frontline army Ukraine had designed an attack that didn't just force Russia to weaken itself, it forced Russia to realize it was already weak everywhere. The entire operation cost an estimated $350,000 in drones. In exchange, they inflicted a staggering $2.3 billion in total economic damage. Ukraine is writing the script for a new kind of warfare, one that looks more like a Hollywood heist than a Soviet textbook. And Russia's playing a character that just can't keep up.
Now, let me know in the comments where the next drone wave goes to the Kursk Bridge or a refiner closer to Moscow. Subscribe for more deep dives into the tech, changing modern warfare. Bye for now.